This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 2, Episode 10, Biking Vermont with Local Motion, and I'm your host, Tom Butler. I need to address something right away. The June 28th episode is a conversation with my wife, Kelly. This week, she pointed out that during that interview, we had the following conversation. I decided to go out and get a different bike, a bike that would put me in a more upright position. Mm-hmm. That was an entry-level bike. I wasn't spending a lot of money on it, but now it's 3 months later, and I'm talking about training to do the STP. It's November. I've got a long time to show that I'm actually going to do the STP. But I just felt like that bike wasn't going to be robust enough to handle the STP and handle all the training hours that I was going to put in. And so, like, 3 months after buying a new bike, I wish people could see your face, but I, announced to you that I feel like I need to buy a different bike and spend more money on a newer bike. Can you remember what you were thinking at that point?
I was just thinking, oh no, this is never going to end. This is the beginning of a long trail of bigger and better, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I was like, okay, here we go.
Now, that didn't happen.
No, not really.
No, I maybe upgraded. I put new bar ends. I made some purchases, but I didn't come back to you and say, hey, I actually need to buy a different bike and an upgrade bike.
I thought you were going to. There was a time I thought you were going to, because it came up more than once.
Yeah. So what came up was, I don't know that this group set on this bike is actually quality enough. So I was kind of concerned about that. And I know that when I started talking about this, it was like, okay, here we go. He's going to make a pitch to get a different bike.
I was waiting for it.
But it didn't happen.
It didn't.
And I think that's good. You can hear me there so confidently talking about how I was not looking for an upgrade to a newer bike, to a better bike. I was proud of that. I was confident that at that point that I wasn't going to be talking about a new bike. And then 6 weeks later, I had this conversation with Lisa Ballou, who was coming on as my coach. But I'm not very aerodynamic.
Right.
I don't think that's my issue.
Well, now that's where I would disagree slightly with you. I think it's a factor. I think it's a piece of the puzzle. So I think, like, if we eliminated all the other factors and all we did was put you on a more aerodynamic bike, you would gain 1 to 2 miles per hour.
And I'm willing to try that. So, 6 weeks after so confidently declaring that I was not going to be getting a new bike, that I wasn't going to be talking about getting a new bike, I was proud of that. I felt that was a big deal. Then I am like, yeah, okay, maybe I need to look at getting a new bike. And now I've done that. I've gone out and I've bought a different bike. I've talked about this on other episodes, the Specialized Bay that I picked up that I actually love. And, Jim, who's a listener, said I would love it. He has a Roubaix, and he's right. I love it. It's not been very long that I've had it. I haven't been on that many rides, but I'm really appreciating the ride that I'm getting on this bike. So here's the main question. Is there any hope for cyclists? Is there any hope that this will be my last bike? In my mind, I'm not going to buy a different bike. I'm not going to go out and get a new bike now. I have the bike that I need. But that's what I was thinking in July when I had that conversation with Kelly. So are there counselors out there that work with cyclists to help them not fall into a concept that we always need a new bike? The area that it seems like I could be the most susceptible to needing a new bike is if I start mountain biking, if I start getting off-road on trails. I can kind of envision the same thing of but now I need a bike to do that. And Kelly's been very cool with this, but I really believe that there is a limit to my ability to keep coming back and saying, now this is what I really need. I thought I needed this bike, but this is the bike that I really need. So if anybody has any suggestions, I'm open. As an update for this week, I have been on the Roubaix. I've been seeing some really interesting things. I'm pushing harder on the Roubaix. It feels like I can push harder on the Roubaix. And so I'm getting a lot of personal bests on routes that I've done a lot. I'm actually really surprised and pleased of how comfortable the Roubaix is. And I'm really being guided by Lisa on how to train, what rides to do, intensity, getting in the gym. So I'm really pleased with kind of how this has started out, this journey working with a coach, and the potential for that really improving my strength and my speed. I'm a week away from ending my 10-week program to get down to 200 pounds. It has not been effective towards that goal. Next week, I will talk more about that, kind of dissect what I did learn, kind of the next step with that goal. I still am just as confident that if I got down to 200 pounds, I would feel a lot better and I would feel the difference not carting around that extra weight. So stay tuned for the next step in that process. When we did the Kitsap Color Classic, the ride was very picturesque. It is really beautiful in the Kitsap Peninsula for sure. But it got me thinking about where there would be a place that would be even more of an environment to experience fall colors. Vermont is the place that came to my mind, so I reached out to Vermont Tourism and eventually got connected to Christina Erickson. She's the executive director of a truly great organization called Local Motion. You can find a link to the Local Motion website in the show notes. Here's our conversation. Today, I am reaching all the way across the country to the great Northeast, and I am so excited to be talking to the Executive Director of Local Motion in Burlington, Vermont, Christina Erickson. Welcome to Cycling Over 60, Christina.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here.
I feel really fortunate that we got connected because Local Motion to me is such an intriguing organization. So I've been really looking forward to this conversation for a couple weeks now. So what is the vision you have at Local Motion and how do you want to benefit local communities?
Yeah, well, thanks. So Local Motion is actually, we're coming into our 25th year, which is really exciting. So 2024 will be our 25th year. And I am pretty new to the organization. I just started as the executive director back in January. So I'm about month 8 and learning all things about us. But I've been an observer and a member of the organization since I moved to Burlington in 2006. So it's been fun to kind of see it from the early-ish teenage years of the organization, if you will, to where we are now. And I feel very fortunate to have come in. My predecessor and the board had developed a strategic plan in 2022 to go through 2026. So I'm lucky to walk into a job with a pretty good outline of what we're trying to do. And, you know, our mission is to make it safe, accessible, and fun for everybody to bike, walk, and roll in Vermont. And we want Local Motion to be the leading resource on all of those things, safety, accessibility-wise, fun, in the multimodal ways of getting around so that people are reducing carbon by using alternative modes or other modes for transportation, improving their mental and physical health, and really addressing issues of social justice and inequity, in particular in the transportation sector and recreation sector. So we have a big multifaceted goal and group of goals with a small but mighty staff.
Fantastic. I looked at the strategic plan and there's a lot of what I think is important work that you guys are looking to do, as well as just really creating some cool things for the communities.
Yeah.
So can you give some background on how Local Motion has become the organization it is today?
Yeah, so back in 1998, 1999, there was a small group of cycling enthusiasts living here in Burlington. And there were a couple of projects happening at the same time. There was an old railroad bed here right along the waterfront that was informally being used as a walking path and cycling path. And that came to be and is now a premier location and destination for people around the world to come and cycle and walk and roll along this bike path. But there was a gap. There was on that rail trail a former railroad bridge that had been dismantled across the Winooski River. And so this group, led by one of the founding directors, Chapin Spencer, he and others said, how are we going to get people across this river? Because there's a trail on this side, there's a trail on that side. How can we connect the two? So he and another kind of founding person, Brian Costello, said, well, let's get a boat. And they got a little boat and they could ferry 6 bicycles and people across the river at a time in a pretty hodgepodge way, but it worked. And then they and many others took years and lots of dollars and lots of political will to get a new bridge built over the Winooski River. And they successfully did that. And then the bike ferry shifted to another gap further up the rail trail, which is where we exist today with a bike ferry. But in the meantime, there were other concurrent things happening within the state. We had a state bicycle and pedestrian coalition made up with representatives from around the state. And there was, and I don't have the exact, dates and timelines and all this, but the basic gist was they said we should merge. And so Local Motion absorbed the Vermont Bicycle and Ped Coalition. And then we became a statewide organization, because prior to that, we were really focused kind of on this waterfront and the bike ferry and Burlington infrastructure and working with the Burlington Walk Bike Council. But it really became that point of, okay, let's take this statewide. And then also in 2016, Local Motion became the statewide coordinator for the Safe Routes to School initiative, which is part of a national Safe Routes partnership. And each state and sometimes major cities have their own coordinators. And so with support from our Vermont Agency for Transportation, or VTrans, as they're known here, we are the statewide coordinators for Safe Routes to School in Vermont. So we've started with a pretty singular focus on getting people across the river and their bicycles, to now trying to get people on their bicycles and their feet and their mobility devices and whatever rolling implements they have to get around the state safely, as well as encouraging visitors to come and enjoy the infrastructure that we have here and recognizing the big positive economic impact that those visitors can have on our state.
Well, good for them that they saw a need to expand and grow. And I'm sure some of that was unknown. I'm sure some of it looked like a pretty big challenge, but good for them for taking that on and just being willing, to grow and to do something bigger and some things maybe out of the box even.
Definitely.
Now, you were previously the director of service and sustainability at a college. What was that experience like, and what did you bring from that position to Local Motion?
Yeah, so my entire career up until last January has been in the world of higher education. I've worked at 3 different colleges, all here in Vermont, from the tiniest, one of the smallest 4-year schools in the country, Sterling College up in Craftsbury, Vermont, to the University of Vermont, our large flagship university, to a mid-sized college called Champlain College here in Burlington. And my focus all that time has been on campus sustainability, which is really a multi-dimension, anything from energy, food, water, purchasing, and transportation for both the campus itself and certainly all the occupants, both the students and the employees and visitors to the campus. And then I've been an educator throughout that. So I was teaching sometimes a full class or sometimes as visiting in different presentations for different classes. And I loved that. I joked that I never really graduated because I'd just been on campus since I was a college student. And it's a great environment to be in. Loved working with students, loved working with colleagues. And there was just an opportunity for a shift and a change. And so that chapter ended and this new chapter opened, and so much is transferable. And now I say I work in community sustainability. And Vermont is a small state. And so I got to reconnect with many of the kind of transportation partners that I had worked with once upon a time. And it's been great. And people have been very, very welcoming to me in this role. And it's still fabulous to be able to connect with the campus resources that for my prior institutions on, anything from recruiting students to work at our Trailside Rental Center to doing service learning projects with us as a community partner, thinking about different research opportunities. There's a transportation research center at the University of Vermont. So there's just great opportunities, and I feel well positioned to connect local motion and our kind of campus resources throughout the state and the work that we're doing, because many of us have similar goals around carbon reduction, equalizing social injustices, and finding the middle ground with all of that.
That is a specific audience that you're teaching, that you're interacting with when you're on a campus.
Mm-hmm.
Interacting with them, how do you view the energy that young people have towards finding sustainable options?
That's a great question. And I think two things are happening. I see incredible diligence and really pushing it, because I think people of the 18 to 22-year-old generation, or, that age group specifically, they know, we're all dealing with it right now, right? And Vermont has had incredible flooding this year, torrential rains, high winds, and that's just us. And we kind of got off easy compared to the rest of the world in terms of climate impacts this year. Young people know this, they know this is their future. And so they are really digging in. And here in Vermont too, transportation represents about 46% of our carbon emissions in the state. As a rural state, that's really, really true, and true for other rural areas. So I think there's a big, deep inspiration to work on that. And I think back to a friend of my family's once saying that, young people have to be idealists, because otherwise who else will be? We need that continued inspiration to dig in, and we need people of all ages and backgrounds to dig in, because that's what it's going to take to continue to mitigate carbon impacts and keep moving forward.
In your strategic plan, there is a focus on developing thought leadership resources.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about why Locomotion has made this a part of your work?
Yeah, so we have 12 year-round employees. So we're relatively, for Vermont, that's kind of a mid-sized organization, but pretty small overall for a statewide organization. And there is so much work that can be done, but we have to really be thoughtful about how we can do that with limited number of people. So we're really trying to look at ways that we can scale up without us doing that directly. So we want to be able to create, support resources or structures that other people can then take and build on their own with our continued support, but that we're not necessarily directly doing all of that. We see that as the way that we can make a larger impact without direct boots on the ground type of being there and running every sprayed chalk line or running every bike workshop or those things. So we are hoping, and we're already seeing it too. And there are lots of bikey things that go on in the state, and we are not responsible for nearly all, or nearly a good chunk of them, which is great. Other people are doing that. We want to make sure that they're supported and have the kind of bigger picture thoughts and structures that are replicable that we can support on this side without having to be there holding hands or spraying the chalk lines ourselves.
I love that, because to me, for your stakeholders, that's like you're making the biggest impact you can make with the resources that you have. So right. I just think that's brilliant. Yeah. That's really awesome to see.
Well, that's the brilliance of the team that I came into. So I'm really grateful. And so now I'm just helping to support them in making that happen.
There is this H126 biodiversity measure. I think it's known as the 30/30 bill. And I'm wondering if that has aided Locomotion in your work to create environmentally healthy recreation.
Yeah, so that's something we haven't been directly involved in, although Locomotion is great. We have a great number of partnerships and affiliations and networks that we really rely on. That's another way that we kind of help spread the word or help influence work without doing it directly. And so there are a couple of alliances that have been very much involved in that. Vermont Outdoor Business Association, VOBA, as one of them. And so that was a policy that they were tracking and encouraging and asking members to support. So it's something that, we're aware of, but not a direct relationship with. One of the things, or in I think connection with that is many of the different trail organizations that there are here in Vermont, and there are many, and whether they're hiking, mountain biking, multi-use, you name it, snow machine, snowmobiling trails, there are a lot of those different organizations, and they're all part of another network. We are really interested in seeing how those trails that are primarily kind of designed for recreation, where are the opportunities for those trails to be either used as transportation, and or how can we help the towns and cities that might those trails be located in, people being able to get to those trails without having to drive to those trails. So we want to see the connections made. And there are efforts. There's a great new effort or renewed effort called the Mad River Path that's right in central Vermont and trying to connect two towns. And so, yeah, it's a recreation trail, but it's also can be a transportation corridor for people trying to get from point A to point B. So really trying to work within those. Or if we're seeing overcrowding at some of the most popular mountain bike trails, but there's not the infrastructure for people in that town to get to the trailhead because there's no bike lane or way to get there. Like, how can we create these corridors so someone could park in town or from their home and get to the trails without having to drive there? So those are part of the conversations that we're trying to engage more deeply in on the recreation side. And how can we also make sure we're protecting these natural resources that are so valuable in many ways, not just to humans, but to the whole picture. It's a good thing for us to keep an eye on, but again, it's not something we're directly involved with.
As far as active transportation is concerned, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about what is happening in, and we look kind of at specifically at bicycle transportation, but what is happening with bicycle transportation as a way for people to stay active, kind of the importance of connector trails, and just the importance of trails, especially for an older population to be able to stay active. Are you seeing any shifts?
Well, just pure anecdotally, and we don't currently collect kind of demographic data of our trailside rental users, but when I go down there, there's folks of all ages coming to rent our bikes and then ride along the Island Line Trail, as it's called here on the eastern shore of Lake Champlain. A lot of folks of the older demographic coming and riding. E-bikes have certainly opened up riding to either, folks who are rediscovering bicycling or figuring out that they can go a little further or longer because they have a little e-assist. It's, I think, pretty revolutionary. And yes, with all new things, there becomes the worry of, are people going too fast? Can they be using these trails? So we continue to encourage trail courtesy and all of that. We also work and have a great partner in our local AARP chapter. And they are very involved in complete streets legislation here in the state. We run workshops with AARP on getting back on your bike or how to tune your bike. So there's definitely, I'd say, an active group of folks in the older age demographic who are out there and kicking some serious butt also, which I got to say. So.
Well, I recently did the Kitsap Color Classic, which is a 50-mile ride out here, and it's known to be hilly. So I'm saying that as somebody that's not particularly a hill climber. So I'm sure there's people out there that, no, it's not really that hilly. But for me, it was significantly hilly. And at one point, I'm, very low gear, crawling up this hill, and an older woman, older than me, came up beside me on an e-bike, and she's like encouraging me, and I'm sure that without an e-bike, she would not have been climbing that hill, and I wouldn't have had that interaction with her. And it was just super fun. And she was, she had a couple of wire baskets on the back of her bike, so this is obviously something she uses. And it was just cool to see. I mean, you could look at it and go, I'm frustrated because you're not having to work to get up this hill. But for me, it was like so cool that she got to come along beside me and encourage me and talk to me a bit as I was struggling up this hill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of my newfound heroes, I just got to learn about this individual this year, and she has the distinction of being our first rider on the ferry every year when it opens, is a 92-year-old woman named Lindy, and she is amazing. And she rides bikes on a nearly daily basis. I think her main bike is an e-bike, but she and her son also have this quadricycle that they go with this beautiful canopy and very eye-catching as they're going along. And she's remarkable. And I think she's a great testament to, whatever your age is, there's a way for you to get out and enjoy riding or walking. And with the advent of different e-bikes, but also and we keep a small fleet of adaptive bikes. And we also work with a partnering organization, Vermont Adaptive, to make sure that if someone has a different physical ability and we can help them get a bike that works for them, we're going to do our best to do that. So it's really fun to see the variety of folks out there enjoying themselves.
And her name is Lindy?
Lindy Millington. Our local news chapter just did a story on her, and she is amazing. I'll be happy to send you the link to her story.
Please do, because I'd love to put that in the show notes. But just to say, go Lindy, go Lindy.
Oh, yeah.
You have focus on the complete streets concept. What is Locomotion doing to promote complete streets?
Yeah, so we have 2 staff people who are really dedicated to complete streets as their focus. And we do a variety of things, from looking at policy and legislation. And so we both at the local and the state level, and we're part of another association of other kind of transportation and mobility related organizations who are doing that. And another aspect of what we do is offer technical assistance. And so we do get some grant support, again, through our local, our statewide transportation agency, as well as our municipal planning organization to support this work. And that is anything from supporting local walk bike groups in each town, of group of citizens or municipal staff who are looking at these issues, and we can go around and offer some design advice. We are not engineers, so we don't do that necessarily, but some general practices, to pop-up demonstrations. And these are excellent. This is where the spray chalk comes out, and we put in a temporary crosswalk so that people can see what it would be like if you had a crosswalk across where you don't currently, or what a bike lane or a protected bike lane might look like. We also offer things about bike parking consultations for businesses, for municipalities, other areas where, we know that one of the reasons why people don't get out, number one, is if people don't feel safe because the infrastructure isn't there where they're feeling safe to ride or walk, they won't. But also, if there's no place to secure their bike where they're going, they're less likely to bring their bike. So we do those bike parking consultations as part of that kind of outreach. And that's an effective way to help the full cycle of things. So anywhere from, policy review and legislative work and a little bit of lobbying to that technical assistance for our municipal areas and citizen groups are our primary ways that we're working on complete streets.
Well, Locomotion surely has a wide range of areas that you're focusing on. And you also have a wide range of partners. Looking at your website, I was really interested in reading through the list of partners you have. And I'm wondering what it is about Locomotion that has inspired an organization like Shape Vermont to partner with you.
Yeah. So again, there's this work is so multifaceted, from, again, the carbon reduction, safety issues, health. And so it does naturally inspire a lot of partnering organizations, and that we can't do everything. We need to really rely on working with others. So Shape Vermont, for example, is this group of physical or health and physical PE teachers. And so through our Safe Routes to School and primarily our Bike Smart program, which are trailers loaded with bicycles and training for a 2-week curriculum where kids learn how to ride a bike. So that's one of the main partnerships that we work on. And usually it's a PE teacher who might be delivering the curriculum during school, or maybe an after school teacher. So that is an example of, this is riding a bike can be that lifelong health and physical and mental health tool. and transportation tool. And so I think that partnership with PE teachers has been great. And so that relationship is primarily maintained with our education and safety manager. And she's been long in the position and has developed a lot of great relationships with teachers across the state.
Fantastic. I live in an area that relies on ferries, the Seattle area. And again, recently I rode a ferry to the Kitsap Color Classic to start it. But I don't think we have any bike ferries. And so when you talk about the bike ferry, it just sounds awesome. And especially hearing kind of how it started. And you've talked about it moving from its initial place to a new place. I wonder if you can talk a bit about the need that the bike ferry addresses.
Yeah, I got to say, it is a beloved and complicated thing.
Okay.
Beloved because, the location, and I'll try to verbally describe this. So there's a rail trail, so a former rail line that cuts across a major bay in Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain, for those of you who don't know, is a pretty okay lake. It's a large lake. It had the designation of a Great Lake for a very short amount of time, and then that got undesignated. So it's a little joke that we call it a pretty okay lake. It's a large freshwater lake. And it's a beautiful lake, and it's pretty, I can't remember the exact dimensions, but, it goes the entire length of our state, running north to south. So this rail trail and rail line goes across a pretty significant bay, up to a series of islands in the northern part of the lake. And these islands are gorgeous, long history, and certainly, indigenous peoples have been here forever and living here and still and using and living among the natural facilities or natural resources of our area forever. More recent time, European settlers, there's a lot of farming going on up there. There's apple orchards. It's absolutely gorgeous. There's some really significant geological features up there, quarries. That's the word I'm looking for. And it's a major cycling destination. Also, folks coming down from Quebec and Montreal, we're a very short distance from Montreal. And so it's this beautiful riding destination. So this rail trail has a 200-foot cut between where, again, there used to be a rail bridge, and that was dismantled in the, I think, 1950s or 60s, somewhere around there. And it still needs to maintain that cut because there's a lot of boat traffic, sailboats, motorboats, fishing boats, all the rest. And so it almost looks like you could jump across it. If you had a sweet jump, I think you could, I feel like people have probably devised all sorts of ways. There is one individual who rows across it on a regular basis. He's a teacher, and he comes down and he rows his own boat with his bicycle and then hops on. Anyway, our bike ferry plays a really pivotal role in getting people back and forth across that cut, as we call it, on the Colchester Causeway. The boat ride is approximately 12 minutes long. It's on a large flat boat with a covering and is operated. We have U.S. Coast Guard licensed captains. It's all official. And it is one of two similar that I have found in my research so far in U.S. or Canada, maybe the world. There's another one similar. It's privately owned in Buffalo, New York. And then there's ours. There are plenty of car ferries that will allow pedestrians and cyclists to board and cross, but nothing else quite like what we have here. And so it's pretty phenomenal. I encourage anyone to come, and we've had riders from across the country, across the world come ride this. Many tour groups will come, and even if we're out of season, they might charter our boat, because right now we just operate on the weekends during the shoulder season. On summer season is kind of winding down. It's beautiful, and it's a boat, and anyone who has a boat knows that boats break and motors have trouble. And so one of the things I didn't appreciate when I took this job is like, oh right, and there's this boat we maintain, and thankfully I have a phenomenal staff person who that is his job, and together with our crew, they keep it up and running. But it's not without its headaches, and it's really worth it because it just provides this unparalleled experience of being out there surrounded by the water on both sides as you're cutting across this long, narrow rail trail. That trail has been washed out by hurricanes and floods, has been rebuilt. Hopefully we don't have to do that again, but it's quite a special place and encourage anyone to come check it out.
It sounds like it also must be a place where people interact, have really fun interactions. I mean, it's not every day that you get to share a bike ferry with other people. And it sounds like there's some international visitors. And so it sounds like this kind of cool social experience as well.
Yeah, I have to say one of my fun things that I did to do is kind of, learning my job is this summer working with a partner. We are also, Vermont is home to the Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which is phenomenal. And they were very kind and donated a bunch of ice cream. And so I loaded up a big flatbed trailer on an e-bike, and Ben & Jerry's gave me this huge cooler full of ice cream. And I pedaled it out to the end of the causeway to celebrate the 10th birthday of our current boat, Bike Ferry 5, or the Bill and Carol Hockey 2. And so I pedaled out there and it's like, who wants free ice cream? And I tell you, the smiles on those folks' faces, actually one woman came running over. She said, I really underpacked. I don't have can I please have one right now? And so just passing ice cream out, and it's a joyous place. People are having a good time. I mean, it could be a challenging ride that same day, and she's going to be so embarrassed. And I won't play this for her. But my 13-year-old daughter, she came out there that all grumpy that I made her ride out to this bike ferry. But then, she got ice cream and things got better real quick. So it's a great place. People have a lot of fun. Our crew is incredibly dedicated. Most of them come back year after year to work on it because and they're mostly like folks who are retired, and this is their fun summer job. Just to keep engaged, and they love the people who ride the bikes. It is a happy, happy place out there.
That's cool. If somebody would want to come and visit and experience that ferry, one of the things I'm wondering about is how would you rate the urban areas in Vermont concerning safe spaces for cyclists?
For anyone either who has been to Vermont or who has not, urban and Vermont is sort of a bit of a contradiction in its terms, but we do have slightly more urban areas. It's all relative. So Burlington is our most populous region within the state. And this is where I live, and this is where our offices are based. And the county where we're based is the most populous. And there are a few other cities officially designated, but mostly, pretty small in comparison to other major urban areas in our country. We are vastly improved. I moved here in 2006, and actually I was just reflecting with somebody the other day who was saying, we know we want to do so much more, but we've come a long way in Burlington. I don't have the numbers of miles of bike lanes and those types of things, but I'll just say it's a lot more that have gone in the last 20 years. And yes, we have many more projects on the books that we would love to see. So overall, it's pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. We live on a hill also. So our north to south is pretty flat. East to west is pretty hilly. So e-bikes have helped a number of people. We did just get a new kind of third generation bike share program in the city of Burlington. And that's, working out some kinks, but by and large, I guess ridership is actually pretty significant, meaning for those very short point-to-point borrows. And so I think that is encouraging. It's just more people on bikes, and more people on bikes mean that more people are going to say, hey, we need another bike lane. And what happened, and why can't we connect point A to point B? We have a walk bike plan that is not fully completed. And so there are a number of projects still to come, and a lot of improvements have been made. So how it compares to other cities, I'm not sure. As a day-to-day user, I feel pretty comfortable riding around because I'm practiced and I do it on a daily basis. Others who are dropping in for the first time might feel a little uneasy, but I think collectively we are making good progress.
I think you make such a good point when you say that if you can get someone on a bike around the city, then they start experiencing, if you can get them out of a car and onto a bike and kind of onto the road, and they start experiencing, okay, I can see where this would really be helpful. Mm-hmm. And so even little things that can get people, on a bike for a day, to get out there.
Nothing like firsthand experience to really, walk in somebody's shoes or bike in somebody's bike lane.
Vermont is a special place in fall. I think that a lot of people think of the Northeast when they think of fall and they think about the colors changing. So if someone was considering doing a bike trip to experience Vermont this time of year, what might you say to that person?
Come on over. It is beautiful. It is stunning. I'd say at any time of year, really. But yes, fall is special because of the foliage. There are a number of, trail networks and rides that have been outlined, and we keep a few suggestions on our website, and link to other organizations who also kind of outline different rides and suggested rides. And so whether you are wanting to ride on a bike path or a mountain bike trail or the gravel riders, there is something for everybody here for sure. And we just have so many towns that really embrace that. So there are a lot of festivals and, my goodness, breweries, you name, we've ice cream. We've got a lot of those things that help make the ride a lot more fun too. So fall's a great time to ride. Bugs are by and large gone. The daylight starts to dwindle a little bit, but the air is drier and temperatures are comfortable, and it's a great time to ride.
Well, I definitely have that on my list to do, is to come out there, not just to experience the ferry, which I'm really looking forward to, but to experience fall colors sometime.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
Yeah. But it is not the only special time there, right? There's the sugaring season. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what sugaring season is. And is it possible to do a bike trip in sugaring season, or is it just too cool?
Oh, no. So for those of you, sugaring refers to maple syrup. And so make sure you're having the real thing. Make sure it's real maple syrup. That's from Vermont, but if other places make pretty good too. This is a tradition that goes back, thousands and thousands of years with the indigenous people of these areas, the Abenaki, who have been here forever and still are here, figured out that you can tap the sap out of a sugar maple tree. And if you condense it down over heating, you get this delicious maple syrup, which personally I enjoy on pretty much a daily basis. That happens, sugaring season has shifted again with climate change. It can happen anywhere now from, some people have tapped in December, January, but more traditionally it's in mud season when the snow is melting, because it's when the temperatures rise a little bit, the sun comes out and it's warming up the sap in the trees. So, which also means everything else is warming up, ice is melting, snow is melting, and there's mud. So I'd say sugar season is a great time for the sampling of sugar. It's a good time to be on a paved path or road. At that point, a lot of trails, and actually most trails, are closed at that time of year because of erosion issues and they're just muddy. So it's a good time to be in Western Vermont, like here in Burlington with our paved bike path. And there are some other recreation paths around the state, like in Stowe, Vermont, that are paved. So great time to visit, but stay on the hard surfaces and not be captured in mud season. You'll be sticky otherwise.
Now, you mentioned fall festivals. Are there also sugaring festivals? And
oh yeah, we have a festival for everything, I will say. Okay. So yeah, there's and I can't remember exactly when it is, but in the spring there's open sugar shacks and like open weekends, so you can go around and visit the sugar shacks that are making syrup, and you get this sweet smelling steam, and it's pretty cool to see that. So yeah, festivals all around.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Now, you talked about Lake Champlain, and I think it's really funny that it's a pretty good lake. What is it? Pretty great lake?
Yeah. Just not a great lake. Officially.
Just not a great lake. Is that a place that's set up for out-of-state tourists as well? Is that a pretty easy place to find lodging and things like that to stay and experience the lake?
Yeah. So Lake Champlain is a huge watershed that's predominantly the west side of Vermont, the east side of New York. And so it's the Adirondack Mountains and Adirondack Park. And then a little bit to our north, Quebec province, all surrounds Lake Champlain. So it's a huge watershed. It's played a great bioregion of the Lake Champlain Adirondack bioregion. And predominantly most of the developed side is here on the Vermont side and the Quebec side in terms of lodging restaurants. There are, and sorry, New York people, like not talking down New York, but it is less developed intentionally because it is a park, but there are plenty of restaurants and lodging options on both sides. There is an individual who worked with many others, but he was really the driving force, Lou Brzee, and he, together with a couple of organizations, developed what's called the Lake Champlain Bikeways, which is a great number of trails mapped out for rides all around Lake Champlain on all sides, so predominantly Vermont and New York. And then our friends to the north, Velo Quebec, they have also developed a number of trails and rides up there. So there is quite a lot to explore. The signage and whatnot might vary depending on the location, but all of those are listed too on our maps and routes page on our website, localmotion.org.
Great. Well, that does sound like a cool place. I haven't ever thought of Vermont as being like a place that has a shoreline. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just that
we
bad.
have really nice beaches too. Who knew?
Okay. Yeah. So, maybe my challenge with geography, but so it's cool to hear that. That sounds wonderful. Now, how about, this is important if you're going to go visit and bike someplace. How about the culinary scene? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. So I won't say if we're the founders, but we are really good at farm to table around here. I mean, Vermont has this long tradition of agricultural state, not just for the dairy, but small vegetable farms, and people have really grasped that. So we have some tremendous food. And not to mention, again, breweries, cideries, distilleries. We have, I think, more breweries per capita than any other state. So there are brew and bike tours, which, all in moderation, of course, but that's a fun option. And then there are even some rides, and this is not one that we are directly involved with, that a partnering organization it's called the Tour de Farms. So this just happened 2 weekends ago, and it's a bike ride that rides around to different farms. And it's pretty cool to be able to see, those locations, and of course the food, and all of it is connected. So yeah, we have great local food here in Vermont, and a good way to explore it is on your bike, or even jumping farmers markets to farmers market with your bike.
That sounds amazing. That really does. How about you personally? Do you have some favorite places or experiences that you could share?
Well, I'm just thinking back, I've lived in the state since 1999, and I remember living when I first moved here and finding a loop of my own to ride around with, and biking along and looking over. I'm like, oh, there's a moose. That's cool. And so just from those moments of experiencing natural history in a way that, sure, people might see a moose via a car, but it's different when you're there and you're kind of looking at this moose while you're on your bicycle, to my daily commute, honestly, and I live half a mile from my office currently, so it's very easy. But I get to bike down and along the waterfront and just see this glorious view of the lake and the Adirondack Mountains in New York across the lake. And it's phenomenal. And I feel so grateful that that's part of my daily experience. And my family, we all walk, bike, or bus to our daily locations. And I recognize the privilege, and I'm so grateful that that's part of our life. And we've really, been very intentional and very lucky to make that part of our lives.
What a nice commute. Instead of like a stressful car ride, you've got this beautiful time before you get into the office.
It's amazing.
I'm thinking that there's a lot of volunteer opportunities with Local Motion. So how would you encourage people to connect to find out about volunteer possibilities?
Well, we list them all on our website, but we are so lucky. And one of the partners, and it connects to food, is our local food co-op, City Market, Onion River Co-op, City Market. They have a program for their member worker hours. So co-op members can earn store credit by volunteering at local organizations. And Local Motion is one of those organizations. And we really rely on volunteers to help staff some of our key programs. One of those is the bike ferry. So we actually have people assisting dockside ambassadors and just helping people, what's on the other side, what should I look for, those types of things, to our valley bike parking. So we get hired by the farmers market, by different waterfront concerts, other places, to set up a secure bike parking area so that visitors to that show or the market can drop off their bike. They know it's there. Somebody's looking for it. So we have volunteers help set up, park the bikes, unpark the bikes, get them back to customers. That's really critical to tuning up some of the bike smart bikes in the wintertime when they're not deployed to schools. So people with some basic bike mechanicking skills, or just somebody who can take a wet rag and wipe down a bunch of bikes, is really essential. Again, we're a small staff, and those volunteers are very, very important to us. And we are actually, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a volunteer celebration and coinciding with a film screening event that we're putting on. And it'll just be nice to give gratitude to our volunteers, and really grateful for City Market to support and encourage more people being part of our organization.
Well, I really appreciate our club here, Cascade Bicycle Club. They're a statewide organization, and they just do such great things. They're involved in a lot of things, and with Wall Bikes, which is a legislative action part of the club. But I'm also in Vermont, I think Local Motion is just doing such wonderful things. And it's so cool to hear more about it and what you guys are doing. I'm wondering if you could wrap up with something that you would like to highlight, something that you're really proud of as you look at the work being done by Local Motion.
Yeah, I have just been so impressed in my 8 months here. I'm so proud of the staff that we have that are working for this mission-driven organization, and the work that they do is incredible. We, again, having those pop-up demonstrations. And so in a very popular rural road that's used by many cyclists, but does not have protected bike lane, we just put in a pop-up demonstration up there and got tremendous feedback. Our Bike Smart program that has gotten 80,000 children learning how to ride through the time that we've been running this program. Our e-bike lending libraries, that we host one here in Burlington, but we set up around the state so people can try an e-bike and see if that's something that would be useful in their lives before they buy one. The bike ferry, our trailside rental center, all of it is just tremendous. And really the people behind that. So our staff, our small but mighty staff of 12 who make this, to, running the back end and the books and hiring people and getting everything staffed and shifting all of that around. It's a phenomenal crew, and I'm really, really proud of them. And I'm proud to work alongside them every day.
So anybody listening, some really good people in Vermont, some great things to see, a place where there's a lot of festivals, I found out, which is awesome. And so plan a trip to Vermont, go experience the bike ferry and go see the fall colors or whatever, experience some great farm to table food. I think that it just sounds like a great place to visit. So thank you so much, Christina, for coming on and sharing about Local Motion, a fantastic organization, and also some things about Vermont. And good luck as you're ending up, I guess, 1 year, and maybe analyzing a bit of that year, and good luck with everything in the future.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I've got a lot of Vermont pride and a lot of Local Motion pride. So it's fun to be able to share that. And yeah, we welcome visitors anytime. Look us up, come on over with your bike or rent a bike from us, and go for a ride.
Fantastic. Thanks again, and take care.
Thanks, Tom.
There are several links in the show notes. There is the Local Motion website, also a link to the news story about Lindy Millington, the 92-year-old cyclist that Christina mentioned. I might have to see if I can get her on the podcast. There is a trail link page for the Island Line Rail Trail, and one for a short video on the bike ferry. Finally, there is a link to a page talking about the Complete Streets Coalition. I really like the Complete Streets concept. I truly believe it is something that could significantly change things for cyclists. I so want to do the Tour de Farms. I went to acornvt.org and looked at what the different farms made available for riders. It looked so good. I might have to figure out how to do that next year. But I haven't looked into flying with a bike. It looks like it could be complicated, but that might make for a good episode. I would love to hear from you about any fall rides that you have done to take in the fall colors. You can find a link to the Instagram and the email in the show notes. Please share your adventures and give any suggestions you have for episode topics. I hope you are meeting the cycling goals you have set for yourself, whether they are destination goals or performance related. Remember, age is just a gear change.